and welcome everybody to the first lesson of the Archive Online Academy course on 3D digital investigation for canvases and painted panels, organized by Factum Foundation and Fondazione Giorgio Cini. I think that more or less now will be all connected. Yeah. Maybe some people is still entering, but I think I will just start with a very brief introduction. The course, as you all might know, focuses on the importance of investigating in 3D, painting canvases and panels. In addition to unveiling the 3D digital acquisition techniques, these meetings, today and next week, are intended as moments of restitution and exchange to disseminate the researches possible thanks to this type of technology applied to cultural heritage. Today's speakers will be Luca Massimo Barbero, historian and critic of modern and contemporary art, who is the director of the Institute of Art History at the Fondazione Giorgio Cini in Venice. The director will introduce the Gallerie of Palazzo Cini and the latest digitization project, which involves the 3D and color recording of 47 panel paintings of the collection of Galleria di Palazzo Cini. Will follow Carlos Bayod, in fact, on the methodologies used for this specific project of recording of Palazzo Cini. And we talk about the importance of the surface relief of artworks. Carlos Bayod is project director at Factum Foundation, and his work is dedicated to the development and application of digital technologies for preservation, study, and dissemination of cultural heritage. In the end, Sanne Frekan will conclude today's lesson by discussing the importance of digital technologies and facsimiles in the decision-making process within the field of preservation and restoration too of artworks. She's professor at Utrecht University and is an art historian who specializes in digital art history. Her research focuses on the digital reconstruction of lost or damaged artifacts and on the use of digitized artifacts for research and education. I quickly remember to the students of Ca' Foscari, UAV, Università degli Studi di Bologna e di Firenze, that to obtain the certificate of attendance is necessary to write a private chat message via Zoom here to Fondazione Giorgio Cini profile at the beginning and at the end of each lesson with your name, surname, and possibly university. The credits will be managed by your university. If you have any questions related to certificate of attendances, credits, or any other practical question about Archive Online Academy, please write to info.aoa@cini.it, at cini.it. I leave the floor to Luca Massimo Barbero, Carlos Bayod, and Sanne Frekan, and I welcome you all.
Thank you. I guess it's my turn. Good afternoon. I'll start with a brief introduction of what the Palazzo Cini is, and of course, I'm thanking everybody here on attending this very important moment for all of us. The idea of Palazzo Cini, as I'm always saying, is that has been, of course, the house of Vittorio Cini, our founder, who bought two palaces in Campo San Vio in Venice and reunited them. One is Palazzo Valmarana and the other is Palazzo Cini now, but I mean, so the so-called Palazzo Cini is a reunion of two great palaces ending on the Grand Canal. In 1981, heads of Cini, and of course you can see on loop some images of our palace, Iana Cini Agliata di Montereale, had a gift and donation to the foundation, originated by his father, which is on the island of San Giorgio in Venice, as a gift of a partial part of the palazzo and the collection of Florentine and early 14th and 15th centuries paintings and some objects. From that moment on, the Palazzo was devoted to not only preserve the works, but also to start a new studies. And that's why it depends on the superintendence of our institute here. What was very important was that when it was opened in 1984, thanks to the studies of Federico Zeri, which was very related with Vittorio Cini due to the fact of being one of his consultants, the Palazzo became not only one of the few private collections, the so-called home museums or house museum, but also a field of studies for scholars and students. It was a various moment that we built during all these decades, the idea of how to preserve and to open the Palazzo. Palazzo is still open 8 months of a year. It's closed, it's from April to November. And hosts, actually on the second floor, contemporary art and old masters shows. So what you see in here is part of the collections, among them the so-called Piero della Francesca and Luca Signorelli, but also has a lot of objects. So we here, and of course I have to thank you, Carlos Bayot, which follow all the works, in order to know more about our collection and also the story about this collection, but also the idea of how important it was for us here at the Institute to have this recording for these 47 panels. There's many reasons about this, but and I heard also, and of course we were talking, and I heard that also the idea of digital can help studies and the public to know more about lost, divided, or I would say damaged polyptych. And it's the case of a polyptych by Ercole de Roberti, which our collection owns only 3, and I would say a half part, which was very complicated and has been actually reconstructed through this technique. But also the idea is, and here you see the Botticelli and the Cosmetura, which are 2 of our masterpieces, and of course they're kind of really related with the image of our collection. It's also a way to share our collection in a different way, in a more contemporary and I would say deep. So while we're going through some of the work of the collection, which I must underline the fact that they're almost all panels. We only have like few canvases, 2 canvases. It's also the idea of a place which is has still the dimension of a private house. We are allowed to host not more than 30 persons on the floor, so which means it's a narrow, very romantic, but very intimate, and I would say also refined space, but also gives us a chance not to host tons and tons of visitor, which is a kind of gives the visit a very intimate and a very rare close up with the work. But also the idea of how the Palazzo Cini can be shared more around the world due to the fact that I'm always kind of kidding, saying it's a palace and a collection in Venice, such a rich city about, museum, hidden in evidence. When the idea is, as you have been seen on the first photos, our door is on a way, almost hidden, on a way in between 2 very important museums. One is the Gallerie dell'Accademia, and the other is the Peggy Guggenheim collection. So we needed also to give more information about our works. What better than an investigation and, of course, recording our work, not only to share and communicate better, but for many other reasons. I'm thinking how already scholars and conservators are working on the work being done due to restorations, actually magnifying some particular works or particular of the paintings, and the idea also how can we work with this incredible capital we have been having, thank you to these digital acquisitions. So I think the experience was incredible, and I think also Carlos would explain better technically what happened in such a narrow space, besides the fact. And of course, everything has been followed by by a very accurate use of the technical machineries, the acquisitions, and also the particular digital work. So what a director can say about his incredible collection? A director can say that digital acquisition is actually one of the enrichment of our history, communication, and also conservation. What I'm thinking also is the fact that we can work on images, we can actually preserve and actually give to the scholars moment by moment the way the painting is preserved and the conservation issues. There's one point I would like just to focus, then I leave the word. Cini had a very, I would say, fortunate and many, actually, three of them. Bernard Berenson was one of them, Federico Zeri, and few others, consultants. That made Cini choosing just great painting with the right conservation issues. The Piero di Cosimo that you have been seeing, I think is one of the most well and best preserved painting of the master, the very rare master. And so you can see here the three Ercole de Roberti we were mentioning before. The paintings are really have been going through few restoration issues and have been very, very well actually conserved in the collection. So the idea is also that we have been working on 47 works. The gallery owns, I would say, almost 80 works. Of course, I'm talking about sculptures too. And we're going up to a number of 100 if we consider objects, which of course they go from ivories to emails and others. So I think that the recording, it's not a new frontier, and I'm still hearing, but it's a classical way of approaching history and conservation, due to the fact also that our hidden wonderful palace collection is closed. Digitalizing it and actually acquisition gives us also the idea of how other people can experiment it to accede to our work and to actually navigate through the quality of our work. So I'm actually thanking everybody who's spending so much actually precise time on digitalizing and refining the quality of the acquisitions. And of course, I'm still thinking, and we're all thinking together, and I think it's very important, how to develop a new idea of a collection through the digital acquisition. So I thank you all, and definitely we all been working on a new aspect of a collection. Thank you to the incredible work has been done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the precious introduction. I think that now with Carlos, we can continue with a more technical point of view. Yeah.
Hello, Carlos? Everyone. Hello, Director Luca Massimo.
Hello,
very nice to be here. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Well.
Would you like me to share?
I am trying. if you give me 1 minute, I think I'm gonna try to share my screen because I'm now trying to change to the laptop from my phone. Should be ready in a minute.
Which might be better.
In the meantime, if anybody has questions or some reflections from already, please feel free to write in the chat or raise your hand to talk. And this will be the same also later.
I apologize, we are having this delay in the connection, but I believe it's going to take just 1 minute. In the meantime, of course, I would like to thank, really, it's a pleasure being here, and it's really an honor to share this space with Director Luca Massimo Barbero, the team of the Institute of Art History in the Fondazione Cini, and the whole team in Archive. It's really a privilege to have been working with them, and the project of recording the paintings at Palazzo Cini in San Vio, it's really a dream that came true, and I'm really looking forward to explain you a little bit more in detail what this entailed.
If you don't have luck with your procedure, I can try to share through mine.
Well, I would just say something and thank you, Carlos Bayod, on my behalf and the behalf of the Institute. It was really the first time that we have been doing a work like this, and of course, such an incredible acquisition. So we are thanking you and of course everybody who's working on the project. The idea is that now the collection and our collection is shared towards new techniques and new horizons. So thank you.
Can you see it now?
Yes, it's about to start. Thank you.
I think we can start. Sorry again for this delay. It was a bit complicated. We had to change devices. But I think it's going to work better if we do it like this. Thank you, Costanza, for your help and support. And again, thank you, Luca Massimo Barbero, for your introduction. I would like to try to offer a very brief presentation about reminding why is it important to record in 3D the surface of panel paintings. I know that the director already mentioned some of these reasons and some of the motivations for why doing this type of innovative projects. Basically, there are so many reasons why to apply digital technologies when you want to really understand what is the actual structure of a work of art. There are so many different ways of analyzing original works of art. Many of them are dedicated to, in a way, see behind the paint layers. We are more or less familiar with techniques like X-ray radiography, infrared analysis, ultraviolet photography. This type of non-invasive techniques are meant to understand what's happening underneath the surface of a painting. We are focusing in this work that we were doing in Palazzo Cini, for example. We were focusing on the top layer of the paintings. We were trying to record the actual relief, the surface that is more related to a tactile experience of understanding a work of art. And I was trying to make a list of all these reasons why to make this type of recordings. So there's so many motivations, as I'm saying. You can record in 3D the surface of paintings for preservation, for research, for dissemination, then also for the reunification of different panels, for reproduction, for exhibition purposes, and then for establishing new hypotheses, like for reinterpretation, or proposing digital restoration techniques, or imagining new versions of works of art. Again, I will try to offer a few examples of all these reasons that could work for you, that could help you understand why this work is important and why we believe it is important. If we talk about recording for preservation, for research, and for dissemination, a collection of works of art, the best example and one of the most important that we have done in archive is the 3D and color recording of the 47 paintings that we carried out in the Galleria di Palazzo Cini in Venice. This was a work that was possible thanks to the collaboration with the Institute of Art History of the Cini Foundation, and of course, thanks to the team that work in archive. Archive is a center dedicated to the analysis and recording of cultural heritage in Venice. The work was about trying to understand how digital technologies can today help us obtain like a snapshot, like if we wanted to understand what is the current state of conservation of one of the most important collections of panel paintings in Venice. The way we did it was by using two technologies in combination. We were recording the color with composite panoramic photography in high resolution. So each of the different paintings, they were recorded from a distance, from a few meters distance, in order to capture small local photographies that then we could reunite, like stitching together different small photographs in very high resolution in order to compose one single large file, again, in very high resolution. This is in regards to the color, to the what we could say the chromatic values of the paintings. But then for the actual topography, for the relief of the surface, we were using the Lucida 3D scanner. This is the system that we have been using for many years. It was developed by the Factum Foundation in collaboration with the artist Manuel Franquelo. And the Lucida scanner is part of the permanent equipment of the Archive Center on the island of San Giorgio in Venice. We have been using it for capturing hundreds of works of art in the main museums in the world. And it's a tool that is allowing to understand a painting like a landscape. Like you have to imagine, and of course, after we do works like this, it's always about trying to explain that paintings are not flat objects. They are three-dimensional objects, and it is important to find the right tools to actually understand what are the topographic qualities of such unique works of art. So for each painting in the Palazzo San Bio, we were obtaining the layer of the color, and we were also capturing the topographic values. This is a render, so this image on screen is like a visualization of the relief information of this painting by Botticelli and workshop. And you could see that it is important to try to show this type of images in which the color and the relief can be perceived both together and independently. Again, this is a render. This is like a representation of the actual 3D model, the actual 3D information that we have been capturing out of each of this series of paintings. We were also about trying to explain that paintings are a combination of layers of information. You can look at the color, and when you see any reproduction of a painting in a book or in a catalog of an exhibition, it is mostly about the color that you are being presented. But we also wanted to highlight the importance of the painting as a three-dimensional object, and especially with panel paintings, especially with this type of, for example, Gothic panels like these ones. There's so much information that you can obtain if you not only look at the flat color data, but if you combine the color with the relief information. You can appreciate and you can get to understand the actual technique that the artist was using to create the different ornaments or the different details on the surface. Details that were important to actually communicate the narrative in the painting. So this is what we were doing over a period of about 4 weeks or 5 weeks, working constantly to record in perfect coordination with the team at the Cini Foundation. So the technicians from Archive Marina, Carolina, Gabriel, all the team involved in recording these paintings. It was all about trying to get the best possible quality data that could be useful for, again, for preservation, for research, and for dissemination of this information. The Fondazione Giorgio Cini has all these archives, all these color and 3D files for internal analysis, for study, and for helping the actual preservation of the originals. And eventually they could be made available to the public when the time comes. It is important to mention this project because actually this collaboration between Factum and the Cini has been going on for many years, and it has been through recording paintings of this collection, of this particular collection, that we carried out one of our first collaborations. This is one of the panels, for example, by Ercole de Roberti, that was part of the Politico Grifoni. And this is why I want to mention this idea of digital technology to help the reunification of panels that might have been scattered in different places. As you can see in this diagram, this is a possible reconstruction of the altarpiece known as the Politico Grifoni, made by Francesco del Cosa and Ercole de Roberti. Is one of the best examples of the Bolognese Renaissance altarpiece painting. And the important aspect of this work of art is that the 16 panels that now survive, they are actually in very different locations. They are scattered in up to 9 museums all over the world. So since the year 2012, we started carrying out this project about going to each of those museums in Europe and also in the United States to try to record each of the panels in order to allow for some kind of reconstruction of the entire altarpiece. This is the panel of San Giorgio that is part of the collection at the Galleria Cini in Palazzo San Vio. But then we also went to Gazzada. We went to the Pinacoteca Vaticana for recording this beautiful predella by Ercole di Roberti. We were working in Ferrara, in Rotterdam, in Washington, in the National Gallery of Art. So all these different panels, each of them, they have their own historic trajectory. So what we could manage, thanks to this technology, is to have a digital database, like a repository of information. This is something, for example, that you can inspect and you can visit in the Factum Foundation website. So in addition to providing the actual original and final files to each of the museums that participated in the project, we have also put together all this information in the same place. You can see it on screen, exactly the same as I am showing you now. You can see the different details of the paintings, comparing with color or without the color. And you can then understand not only the state of conservation, not only the condition, but also to learn about the artistic technique. This project was primarily for research. And as I say, in order to have all these panels together in virtual form in the same site, in the same online resource. But then we started figuring out what could happen if we could reconstruct this data in material form. This is when sometimes the digital information can be rematerialized as facsimiles, which means like exact replicas that are reproducing the color and the relief of the originals, using different materials, using synthetic materials like resin, etc., printing with flatbed printers, so that you can transfer exactly the 3D information and the color information that you capture with your scanners and with the scanners and the photographic cameras back into the material world through a complex process of making these facsimiles. So this is what we were doing for a few years. This was a project that involved many of our team of Factum in Madrid. These are images of the workshop. And you can see just small summary of the different steps that are necessary to go from digital information into a physical reconstruction of the facsimiles. Things like the gold have to be applied by hand. It's not possible, for example, to print exactly the same effect that the gold leaf is producing. So there's always this combination of digital fabrication technologies and craft skills. This is an image of the politico-grifoni facsimile that we made for a temporary exhibition that took place in Bologna, in Palazzo Fava, in the year 2020. As you can see in this image, it was about presenting to the public, to the visitor, with a possible reconstruction of what the experts believe would have been the original configuration of this altarpiece dedicated to Saint Vincent Ferrer. The altarpiece was originally in Bologna, and this is why it made sense that the facsimile, in a way, was returning to its original location. So it is not only about reunification of scattered fragments, it is also, in a way, about repatriation, if you want, because it's about bringing something back to the original place, or at least to the original city for which it was made. This is an image of this exhibition, and then we also had the possibility of visiting the original panels that were traveling, each of them from their respective places of origin, from the different museums. It was the first time that the 16 panels were brought together in the same space, in the same context. So people had the opportunity of seeing the originals in this configuration that you can see in this image, but also to appreciate the facsimile in a different room in a kind of hypothesis of the possible configuration. This is one of the great advantages of facsimiles. It allows you to imagine arrangements or different hypotheses of original configuration that it is not possible to put in practice using the original paintings. In Palazzo Fava, in the same exhibition, the Factum Foundation and also with Archive, we were working in a different area of the building to create an exhibition precisely about the materiality of the aura, which is basically about new technologies that can be used for the preservation of works of art. So, for example, it was a bit of a kind of a making of. It was about showing steps of the process of making facsimiles. It was about showing material tests or intermediate steps in the process. For example, as you enter this exhibition, this parallel exhibition, you could find a room completely painted in white, in which we were showing a selection of paintings that we were presenting to the public only as relief reproductions in white, including the 16 panels from the political grifoni that, thanks to a specially designed system of raking light, it was possible to understand the paintings as if they were low reliefs, just painted with light and shadows, so people could appreciate the actual structural topography of works of art without the color. And this was interesting for once, to have the possibility of seeing a painting without the color. Another panel that we were showing in this room was this important painting that is by Beato Angelico, which is it is in the Museo del Prado. So we were not making a full facsimile of this painting. We were trying to present only the actual topographic data, exactly as if it was a landscape that you can see from above, just as a way to offer a different interpretations of these important works of art. And this is what takes me to the last series of reasons why making this type of 3D recordings, when you can use this technology for offering a new interpretation of a painting or to propose digital restoration projects. This surface that I was just showing about the Annunciation by Fra Angelico This was part of a collaboration project that we were doing with the Museo del Prado here in Madrid. And in this case, we had the opportunity of recording this important panel after a long process of restoration and cleaning that was taking place in the workshop in the Museo del Prado. So these images are showing you the moments in which we had the opportunity of applying the 3D scanning technology and the color recording technology to capture the state of the painting after the restoration process. You can see in this image flat color representation of this panel painting, and you can see here the actual render of the 3D information that we could capture again after the restoration process. And this is a particularly interesting panel to mention in this session today, because it is so different the way you can perceive the painting with the relief or without the relief information, that is really shocking to understand this difference. So for example, in this detail of the head of the angel, we can look only at the flat, let's say, perfectly flat information of the color, which is in a way only half of the experience. If you want to have the complete experience of what is really this object, you need to combine both layers of data, color and relief, and then you will be able to understand every precious detail, almost like goldsmith's technique that Fra Angelico was using for creating this kind of effects on the surface of the painting. Or you can just go and remove, virtually speaking, the layer of color and just look at the painting as a bas relief. Any other detail in the painting that you can look, it really communicates better its true nature when you are incorporating the 3D information. For example, the hands of the angel, it's very impressive how you can see that maybe in a maximum thickness of about 1 millimeter, the artist was capable of creating different planes so that the hands of the angel were like approaching to the viewer against a background which is in a way in negative relief. We have been using this technology in different institutions, collaborating with different teams to understand better paintings. For example, in the Pinacoteca Ambrosiana in Milan, trying to determine paintings by Luini, but also incorporating other layers of information like ultraviolet or X-ray radiography, or when possible, also to record the back. So understanding the painting as a sculpture, if you want, or as a fully three-dimensional object, front and back, as part of the same 3D model. You can also use this technology to imagine how paintings must have been originally, for example, in the case that they are split in two parts, which is the case of this painting by Carpaccio that, as you know, one part is in Venice, the other one is in Los Angeles. So we were also recording this painting in Venice as part of a collaboration with the Museo Correr, in order to have information for an eventual, and hopefully this is something that we will be able to complete in the future, to have the information to carry out a reconstructions of both halves together, if we ever record the other half in the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. Or for example, going to Bonn, in this Hospice du Bonn in France, for recording huge altar pieces like this one by Roger van der Weyden as part of a research project, which is in a way dedicated to the memory of Bruno Latour, originally from this city, from this town of Bonn. I wanted to conclude with this last example, which is something we have recently done also with the Museo del Prado. And it's a good example of how these technologies could be useful also as a tool for the restorers and conservators to actually work actively to the recuperation of a painting that needs work, that needs repair. This is a Gothic panel by Antoni Peris, which is part of the collection of the Museo del Prado. But what happened is that this background, this golden background and the crown on top of the Virgin, this was not part of the original painting. This is something that was modified maybe later in the 18th century in a very different aesthetics that was making the whole painting very unbalanced, and it was not allowing to really understand the whole value of the artwork. So as part of the restoration process that the Prado was doing, we were asked to carry out a rather innovative approach, which was about going to see other panels of this same altarpiece that are preserved, in this case in Valencia, not in Madrid, so that we could record the background, the golden background with the craquelure, with all the cracks and all the details of another painting by the same artist, by Antoni Peris. So with this information, we were capable of trying to reconstruct a new background for the painting in Madrid. So this is what we were creating. Thanks to a very complex process of digital adaptation, so the information that we recorded in Valencia, we were digitally adapting to the measurements and the dimensions of the panel in Madrid. We could create like a new background, but a new background that would incorporate like a frame, everything as scientifically accurate as possible in collaboration with the experts in the Prado. So this new background could be placed on top of the original painting. This is like almost without touching the original panel, only in the perimeter, so that the restorers in the museum, they didn't have to remove the existing background in the painting. So this operation is 100% reversible. It is something that can be removed in the future, and because the other layers of history, these modifications, these alterations that happened in the 18th century are still preserved underneath this new background that was installed in the 21st century. It is interesting to mention that the image that the Prado offers in their website about this painting, it is already incorporating in the technical data the aspect of the new background that we created using digital technologies and digital modes of fabrication. This is a very innovative approach in which you are using these technologies for helping a reversible process of restoration. And then they were creating like a hybrid between original painting and a new addition that can be removed if necessary. So at this point, I would like to leave the room to Professor Sanne Frequin, because I was just mentioning this project with the Prado as an innovative approach to restoration, but what she's going to explain, it's even going beyond that. It's about how to use these digital technologies of recording and fabrication to a really radical approach to the conservation of paintings. I will leave it now. I will leave it here. And I would like to say that, again, thank you to the Fondazione Cini for allowing us to do the work and to work with them in this exciting project of the Galleria Palazzo Cini in San Vio. And I would like also to thank Sanne for her participation in this session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Carlos. You're very, very kind. Let me start sharing my screen. Just a second. Where is it? Here it is. So hopefully you can all see my presentation. Can you nod if you see it, Carlos?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, great. Okay, there we go. Well, thank you for the kind invitation to speak during this event. And thank you for two wonderful stories about exciting projects in digitization of artworks. I am an assistant professor at Utrecht University, and I am very interested in how can we use this digitization in a scientific project. So my presentation today will be a presentation from the scientific perspective, but do not worry, it will be very practical. So The start of my story is July 2020, when I was visiting Museum Catharijnenconvent in Utrecht with a group of students. In the museum, preparations were going on for the exhibition Body Language, which was a very exciting exhibition on the depiction of the medieval body in the Middle Ages. And they had, it's too much fun to not show it, they had a room that was devoted on hair. So here you see this very innovative exhibition design where the hair was actually recreated. And of course, we see a lot of depictions of Mary Magdalene. And they had, for example, a room devoted to blood, to medieval blood. And the curator had selected one specific painting for this room from the museum's own collection. And this painting was only reproduced in black and white in the museum catalogue, and it had never been exhibited in the recent history of the museum. So actually, no one knew what it would look like. That's how it goes in museums. Curators often do not know their entire collection. So nobody had seen this piece in ages, and when they pulled it from the depot, there was no outburst of love and excitement from the museum crew, and the reason for that you see over here. The painting was dirty. It was covered in a very thick layer of a yellowed varnish, and it had a very, very ugly frame, which is obviously not original. Nonetheless, the curator of the museum saw that it is a very important piece and that this piece was in dire need of restoration. So that was the moment that the museum ordered conservator Caroline van der Elst to start a provisional restoration of the painting so that it could be ready for exhibition. And that is where we enter the story. Because one of the cool things that the museum did was that they planned this restoration in the museum exhibition room. So Caroline was actually restoring the painting in the room. And when I was visiting the museum with my group of students, we were able to talk with Caroline about the painting, about the restoration process, and she took us with her in this whole process, and she asked us a very important question. But before I dive into this, I first want to take a closer look to the painting itself. So here we see it. We see it before restoration, and we see it during restoration. And the name of this painting is, or the painter of this painting is not known. It is a painting from an anonymous master who has a so-called noodname, and his name is the Master of the Lindau Lamentation. This name he gets, or she gets, from the connection of this painting to another part of his oeuvre. And here we see the lamentation over the dead Christ. And as you can see, there are striking comparisons between both paintings. One of the things that are very striking is, for example, the very stylish drooping eyes, I call them. So the eyes are very stylishly depicted. Another comparison are the 3 drops of blood on the body of Christ, which is an exact replication of the 3 drops of blood on the body of the Lindau Crucifixion. And also the handling of the drapery by the painting suggests that these paintings belong to the same group. The painting is quite large. It's 125 by 89 centimeters, and it is painted on wood and plaster. We look at the painting, and here we see Caroline van der Elst, who is handling the painting when we were doing the 3D scanning. The painting is made of 2 boards of Fear, Abies alba, who are disposed vertically. We see that there is a very strong curvature in the painting, and the museum carried out some dendrochronological research, which was done by Marta Dominguez del Mas, and she found out that the tree was cut after 1426. So the production date of the painting, late 1420s. The museum dates the painting of about 1430, and the origin of the wood is likely to be a variant. One of the things that I find very interesting in this painting is that it is not flat. Carlos mentioned it before. Paintings are seldom flat objects. We perceive them as flat because we see them often in a book or on a screen. But if you are in a museum, you always see that a painting has a topography. And the topography in this painting, you see here in this detail picture, you see that the tendrils of the golden tendrils pop a little bit out of the painter. The painting was made by this wooden panel, and on the panel a layer of gypsum was placed where this low relief with tendrils and so-called tremolierung. And tremolierung are crescent-like cuts that you can make by rocking a knife back and forth on the gypsum. It's actually a technique that is that's being used by goldsmiths. This tremolierung and these golden tendrils form the background of this painting, and this is very important. So I will come back to this later. Okay, a quick look at the iconography. Of course, we see a crucifixion. In the middle, we see the crucified Christ. On his right side, we see his mother Mary, and on his left side, we see John the Evangelist. And John the Evangelist we can see because he handles his book. In the front, there is at the feet of the figures, there is grass, bones, plants, flowers, and animals, some snails, and these all have this iconographical meaning. So the bones are a symbol of Golgotha, the place of skulls, a reference to the skull of Abraham. The flowers can be read as a symbolic element. So the clover with the 3 leaves that are a symbol of the Holy Trinity. And of course, we have the snails, and here a little worm that is peeping out at the feet of John the Evangelist, that all have this symbolical meaning. But the most important thing of this painting is, the most important iconography of this painting is the body of Christ, the depiction of the body of Christ. And what is very, very visible and what strikes out immediately when you stand in front of the painting is this very, very bloody wound on the side of Christ, on his right side where the lance has cut him. The blood is really flowing out. I already noticed the 3 drops of blood that are spread over his entire body, and also where his crown of thorns is, you see the blood leaking out of his head. So this is not because the painter had a very distinctive taste for bloody scenes, but of course this blood has a very important iconographical meaning. The blood is, for example, mentioned in the Last Supper. This is my blood, when Christ hands out the wine. And of course, during Mass, we have the transubstantiation, the moment that the wine changes into blood. And in the painting, I don't know if you have noticed them already, but you see around Christ 4 little angels who are flying, and they all carry little chalices, and the chalices are actually catching the blood of Christ. So the angels are actually catching the blood of Christ in the chalices. And if we think about the function of a painting like this painting was not made to be hung in a museum, obviously. It was made to be hung in a church above an altar where this actual transubstantiation, this actual miracle of change was taking place. So it had a very distinctive function in showing to the people attending Mass that they could join in this miracle of Christendom. So blood, a very, very important element in this painting. And there's one specific and very interesting iconographical detail which I want to show you, and then I will stop my iconographical analysis, because you come for the digital and not for iconography. That is here. We see that the blood from Christ's right hand is leaking down into the chalice of this angel, and then here on the veil of Mary. And this blooded veil of Mary, the so-called peplum cruentatum, is very important. It helps us to place this anonymous painting in its context. And this peplum cruentatum was actually a relic, the relic of the blooded veil of Mary, and that came into the possession of the Emperor Charles IV of Bohemia, who was a very passionate collector of relics. He uses this veil as a means of propaganda. He shows the magnificence of his reign, showing it to people. He builds up cults, and Jeffrey Hamburger calls this relic a so-called super relic, because there are not a lot of relics of Christ and Mary, because they went into heaven. So the bodily relics that we know from, for example, medieval saints, are not available for Christ and Mary. So to have this feel, to have this relic of touch of Mary, is very important for the people who believe. Okay, so we know that this peplum cruentatum is starting to show in the 14th and 15th century, and I show you one example of this. This is the Master of the Visibrod altarpiece. I have no clue if I pronounce this rightly, because my Polish is non-existent. So this is the Crucifixion, and here you see that the blood of the side wound of Christ is really, well, leaking on the veil of Mary, and here the painter has decided to give her a white veil to really stress it out. So very important iconographical motive. And when we go back to our painting, why is this motive so important? Because it helps us to place the painting in the geographical context. It is connected to Bohemia, and that connects also to our findings in the dendrochronological investigation. So the wood is also probably coming from Bavaria. Okay, back to our meeting in the museum, because Caroline van der Els was restoring the painting, and she showed our students a problem, because she discovered something. And the problem is about the gold and the blue. So what do we see? If we take a very good look at the painting, then you see that the streams of blood of Christ are obscured by the azurite blue layer of the background. So probably something is fishy over here. Here I have a detail of the right hand of Christ with a nail in it, and here you can see it very clearly. So the blood streams are covered by the blue layer, and that was the finding of Caroline. She said probably this blue layer is a layer of overpaint, a later overpaint, and probably the painting did not look like this when it was originally conceived in the 1430s, 1439s. And very important, she discovered that this overpaint is not a 19th or early 20th century overpaint, but this painting was probably overpainted very soon, probably maybe only 100 years after its conception. So it is a very early addition to the painting. And then we have a problem, and then we have question, because if the background of the painting was originally gilded entirely and this blue azurite layer was added later, what should we do? Should we remove the layer and go back to the original, or should we keep the layer? The arguments for removal of the layer are clear. If we remove it, we can go back to the original meaning of the painting. We honor the wishes of the painter, and we can see the painting as it was meant to be. So the overpaint is a later addition. It's covering the blood. The blood is very essential to the meaning and the function of the painting, so the blue must go. People who say, no, we need to keep this layer, say, we can never go back to the original. If you look at the painting, you see that it also has a very strange format. So besides the overpaint, it was also cut in pieces, and not very well cut in pieces, because you see that the cross here is very diagonal. So people who say we will not remove the overpaint can say we can never go back to the original. We do not know how this painting looked, and a technical argument is that the tremolierung, so the little scale-like gouge decoration, is very damaged. So if we remove the blue layer, we probably could not see the original tremolierung, so it would be a reconstruction, and that would not be the correct way to do so. This is a very difficult discussion, and I think there is something to say for both elements. And in the end, the museum said we will not remove the blue layer because it is an irreversible act. And of course, in the ethics of restoration and conservation, irreversible acts to a painting are not the way that we work. But when we were in this room with our students, they thought about a third option. Why should we not create a digital twin of both artworks, but a digital twin for the original version and a digital twin with a reconstruction? So let's try to reconstruct this original version of the painting. So I'm very happy that Carlos has already told you how this Lucida 3D scanner and panoramic composite photography work. Saves me a lot of time. But we worked with the wonderful team of Factum. They came to Utrecht and they made a 3D scan of our painting. And this was not very easy because of the curvature of the model. So they need to manually adjust the camera of the Lucida scanner time and time to make sure that we got the best image possible. The panoramic composite photography was also interesting because there was a lot of gold on the object, and gold does not do well when you take photos of it. That's one of the biggest problems of capturing gold. So here you see the Lucida 3D scanner in action, and here you see the setup for the panoramic composite photography. And then we got this wonderful Factum viewer, of which we have seen a couple of examples already, where we can see the 3 versions of the original painting that we can now see digitally. So we have on the left the color information, and you see that the gold has become very dull because this gold does not work well in photography. You see in the middle the version with only the topography, so only the relief, so to say, and on the right you see both versions in an overlay. And I think Carlos stated in our last painting already that we cannot underestimate how much information we can get of the object without the color information. I'm an art historian. I would never have thought me saying this 10 years ago, but actually removing the color allows us to look in new and different ways. So very interesting thing to experiment with. And here we see the detail of the angel. On the left, we see the detail without the 3D information. On the right, we see the detail with the 3D information. And here I have a detail of the angel. And on this detail, I think you can really appreciate also this tremolierung motif. So the little triangles that you see over here, that is the tremolierung that is going on. But at the same time, you can see in this detail that the blue overpaint has filled up the tremolierung. So on a lot of places, the tremolierung is not visible anymore because it's entirely obscured by this blue overpaint. Okay, so then after we obtained this 3D scan of the current painting, it was time to start reconstructing the digital model. So we wanted to go back to the original version in this digital model. And the largest problem or difficulty that we had was the reconstruction of this tremolierung. The tremolierung is very important for the painting because one of the most important elements of gold is that it reflects light. And the more surface you have, the more light it reflects and the more lush a painting looks. So tremolierung was very important for us to create the original version of the painting. We tried it in two separate ways. So together with Ruben Wiersma of the TU Delft, we trained a AI to see if that could reconstruct the tremolierung of the painting. And when I started, I was very excited about this, and I still think that it's a wonderful experiment. But at the same time, the people of Factum were digitally and manually reconstructing and adjusting the geometry. And when we had both versions next to one another, the manual version was the one that was better. So that's also an interesting thing to take into account. You know, the technical solution is not always the best solution, and we need to be aware of that. So we have adjusted the geometry of the 3D model, and this adjusting is not very difficult. I did a little bit myself because it is practically adjusting the height map, and a height map is a grayscale image in Photoshop where the deepest parts are black and the highest are white. So if you can play with that, then you can also play with the geometry. So, and in the end, we had this this virtual model, and we decided that it was good enough to go. Let me see. Yes. So when we had this second version of the painting, it was time to bring them back into the physical world. So we did a 3D scan, we did a 3D reconstruction, and then we started to recreate the paintings in the physical world. And that is done with an elevated print by the wonderful people of Factum, and this print is molded with a liquid silicone. And then after we have this mold, a cast is made on a gesso-based flexible skin, and on this skin this color is printed. What you see here is the 3D print or the 3D skin with a polymant on it, because gold leaf needs to be placed on this print, and to be able to put this gold leaf on the facsimile and to make it shine by polishing it, we needed this polymant. So again, a combination of, on one side, these digital techniques, and on the other side, the handiwork of a very good conservator who knows how you apply these techniques. And then to make sure that our new version of the painting would not look very new next to the old version of the painting. If you reapply gold leaf on a painting, then it looks like it's new, and that's not what we wanted to obtain. They printed contour lines and craquelure on both of the paintings. And after that, the skin was fixed on a resin board with the original shape, so the original curvature. So the two facsimiles that we have also the exact curvature that our original painting has. So while we were doing this, something very exciting happened, because we received from the people of Factum the first version of the 3D print for us to see if it was correct. And the first version of this print was sent to Caroline, our restorer or conservator, who was actually working on the painting in her atelier at that moment. And when I gave Caroline a call a couple of weeks later to ask her if I could arrange the shipment of the painting back to Factum in Madrid, then she said no. And I was a bit stunned. I said, no, it needs to go back. She said, you have to come to my workshop, because, you know, something exciting is happening here. And what happened was that she was restoring the painting with the facsimile on the easel next to it. And she said, I think we restorers from now on always need a 3D print of the paintings that we are restoring, because the process of restoring a painting is much more precise and much more efficient if you have this life-size exact facsimile next to it. And this for me says it all, because if a conservator thinks the quality of a facsimile is good enough to use it during a restoration as a source, then we can, you know, safely say that that the quality is amazing. And it also helps us to think differently about these facsimiles. You know, we are trained, I am trained as an art historian, so I am trained to really think about the value of the material, to think about the value of the original, to think about the historic sensation that you stand in front of a Fra Angelico and you think about all the things that this painting has seen and has done, and the people that have seen it. And of course, all these things are important, but all these things also make that we sometimes are a bit skeptical towards a copy or a facsimile or a reproduction. If I talk to people in a museum, curators, and I say, okay, but why don't you put a facsimile in your exhibition? It would be nice to have a painting that you cannot get, that you cannot loan, and show it to the people. And people are always a bit hesitant about that. They think, oh, should we do that? Would the public like it? And I think the project, my project, but also the project of Factum Foundation, show us that there is a value of these facsimiles, not as replacements of the originals, but we can use them in different ways, and we can actually use them in the conservation and restoration process. So this was the first version, and these are the final versions. And I remember when I opened the casket with both versions in it, I was stunned. It was as if two medieval paintings were shipped from Madrid to Amsterdam. The people next to me were stunned because the quality of both paintings was amazing. So what do we see? On the left, we see the current version, or actually it's not the current version anymore because the original painting is now restored. So this is the pre-restoration version of the painting, like we scanned it. And on the right, we see the original version of the painting. And you can see that it's really a big difference. And I will take you to some examples first. So the first thing that strikes the eye when you look at this painting is how much clearer the figures are on the painting. So everyone pops out immediately. Let me see. Yes, here we go. So here I have John the Evangelist, the two versions of John the Evangelist. On the left, you see the version with the obscured tremolierung. And on the right, you see the version with the entirely golden background. You see how we have restored this tremolierung, so how it looks like the original version. And you see that there is a much clearer discern between the physical or the humane person, the evangelist, and this background of heaven, this very lush, golden, flickery, out of this world background. And here we see Mary, and for Mary goes the same. I think the humanity of Mary is much more clear for people who are looking at this painting in this golden version. And of course, Christ, the most important part of this painting. And for Christ also, this very stark difference between the humanity, the suffering Christ, and heaven that is represented by this golden background is stunning. And here we see the angel. And here you see the angel. And I think this is one of the most interesting things. When you look at the original blue painting, you almost do not see the angels. I have looked at it with a lot of people from different backgrounds, and I've heard multiple times, oh, there are angels on it. There are 3. Oh no, there are 4. So people need to really focus on the painting to see these angels. And these angels are important because they are part of the meaning of the painting, and in the golden painting they pop out immediately. So here we have these 2 versions of one painting. And why is it important to have these 2 versions? Well, I think when you look at the blue painting, so the painting like it is now in the museum, you see that it is not a painting as it was meant to be. And the only way to know that and to see that is when you are confronted with the earlier or with the original version of the painting. You immediately see, when you have the 2 next to each other, that this blue layer covers the meaning of the painting, and you get an entirely different experience when you look at the golden painting in comparison to the blue painting. But there's more, because it's nice to have this, it's nice to know this, we can see things with our own eyes, and we can have an idea about what this means and why this is important. But I wanted to go further. I wanted to know more. And to explain to you what we will do next with these 2 facsimiles, I have to take you to another painting, a much more famous painting, The Night Watch, which is currently in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. The Night Watch, entirely different period, entirely different painter, Rembrandt van Rijn, 1642. I assume that this needs no introduction, so I will directly dive into research of colleagues from the Netherlands in the journal Perception. And their question was, how do people distribute their attention while observing the night watch? And this was a very interesting investigation that I wanted to replicate. So first, a little bit of information about this research. These researchers wanted to know how viewers engage and perceive the night watch, highlighting the role of specific visual elements in directing attention. You do not see my screen anymore, I think. Is this correct?
Yeah, we don't see it now.
I think someone. Oh, there we are. It's back.
Yes.
So, eye tracking. These people wanted to know how viewers engage with.
Fascinating. It's about a digital restoration of European paintings. So I sent them in the chat my link to this article.
Really, I really like that you like it, but maybe it's a good idea to mute. Okay, so eye tracking. How viewers engage and perceive the night watch, highlighting the role of specific visual elements in directing attention. What these researchers did was they had 2 approaches. The first approach was to put 21 persons 5 minutes each in front of the painting. And during these 5 minutes, their eye movements were recorded using a mobile eye tracker, Tobii glasses, they are called. And at the same time, they verbalized their thoughts using the think aloud method. And the think aloud method sounds really techy and important, but it's nothing more than just say what you see. So they were telling the researchers what they saw. And this was an enormous amount of data, which they rubricated into specific elements. So, for example, chicken, because the girl of the night watch has a chicken on her belt, contrast, darkness, detail, girl. And this information they have put together into so-called heat maps. And this heat map is a heat map that shows the attentional distribution. So if we look at this heat map, the bluish reddish color is where people focus their attention to. The greenish is where they focus less attention to, and everything that's gray, that's not very important. So what we see is that in the 5-minute period, they mainly look at the faces of the front figures of the night watch, and they go into the places that are lighter. What's also interesting is that they look at the distribution of attention over time. So the left picture is of the first 10 seconds of looking at the painting, and the right picture is where people look in the last 10 seconds. So we see that he first strongly focused on the faces, and then attention blurs a little bit towards the rest of the painting. What I find interesting is what would happen if we replicate this research using R2 facsimiles. And I think this is important and interesting because then we can really see the impact of a restoration on the perception of the viewer. When we think about restoration, we think from the perspective of the painting. Is it an irreversible irreversible action if we do something to it? What is the life story of the painting? What is original and what is not? But when we take this approach, we can also incorporate the viewer in this discussion. So what actually changes when a viewer looks at the sorry, I'm going back because then we can see it. What happens when a viewer looks at the golden version of the painting, and what happens when a viewer looks at the blue-gold version of the painting? And of course, the hypothesis is that viewers immediately look at Christ, and that they are much more focused on the elements that are connected with the blood. But this we need to find out. So we will do an eye tracking experiment in the coming spring, and find out what happens when we look at this painting with these eye tracking devices. Another element that is interesting when we recreate these paintings is that it is possible for us to investigate these objects in contexts that we would never create with the original. And one example that I want to give is, for example, candlelight. I earlier mentioned that paintings like this were never meant to be placed in a museum with very nice stable LED lights on a white wall where you can, really go close to it and look at all the intricate details. No, these paintings were made to be placed in churches. And from my own research, I did a PhD investigating funeral monuments, tombs in the Middle Ages. I know that sometimes during funerals, so many candles were placed in churches that roofs needed to be opened to literally let escape the warmth of these candles. So you have to imagine that churches were filled with candles. But if I go to the curator of Museum Katerijnenconvent and I say, can I borrow your painting because I want to put it in a church and I want to put 500 candles next to it, I have a fishy feeling that she will say no. And righteously, you know, it's much too dangerous to do these experiments with original paintings. But with a facsimile, like the one we have now, we can actually see what's happening when we put candles around this. And this we will also try with this eye tracking and this speak out loud method. And my hypothesis is that when we do this, that we will have the effect of liveliness, so that we will have the idea that the angels are actually floating in the air. And by that, we get to know more about the function of these paintings. How were they used? How were they observed? And what is it that we are missing when we're looking at a painting in a museum? So, oh, I had a wonderful picture of a candle. So, what did I tell you today? I started with this very ugly painting. Well, it was ugly when it was found in the museum. A painting where the conservator discovered that a blue paint layer was painted over it. I took you to the reconstruction process, both the digital reconstruction and the physical reconstruction. And I have explored a little bit with you what are the purposes of these reconstructions, because it is nice to have them, but when we do these kind of things from a scientific perspective, there always needs to be a question. It is always important to have in mind why you are recreating this and what your questions are. What are your reasons for the recreation of artworks? And the last thing that I would like to tell you is that science is teamwork. So I've been presenting this project, but this would never have been possible without the wonderful team of Factum, without Lieselore Thiessen, my colleague from TU Delft, Caroline van der Elst, the conservator, and Misha Leeflang, curator of Museum Catharijne Convent. And I really like to thank all people from Factum, because I really like working with you guys. And I hope that you have enjoyed my presentation. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. And if you can't ask them now, you can always send me an email or send me a post on LinkedIn. Everything's fine. I'm always happy to tell about these amazing projects, and start project your own. Start thinking about how you can use these techniques in your research, in your museum, because it's way too much fun not to do it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For the explanations and the effort and the enthusiasm in this. I see that there is a question that is more from our side. They're asking if if the talks are recorded and published online or in print. Yes, as usual, the Archival Line Academy talks and classes and courses are published online on the Fondazione Giorgio Cini YouTube channel. So this as well.
Yes. Can I add to that, Constanza? Because there's an open access publication about this project. So if you Google Son of Reken and Lindau, you will get to it. There you can read more on this project.
Yeah, I don't link it because I remember it's easy to find. It's the first result that occurs. And also on Factum Foundation website, there is, well, of course, in a synthesis, but there is the very same project narrated by images too. And Carlos Bayod's presentation was a summa of many projects that you can find online on the website or also on YouTube because we spoke about it in previous lessons too. Maybe from different point of views, because every case study brings something different, and that's why we were extremely happy to hear your thorough study, yours and of course also your colleagues, since this is really a teamwork from both sides, of course. If anybody has other questions or observations, please do share via chat or raising your hand. Yeah, I see that somebody shared the article too. Thank you.
Do not feel shy to ask questions. All questions are fine, even if you think they're not very intellectual, or just go ahead.
In the meantime, somebody will think about a question. I just wanted to say that I really appreciated the three versions of the crucifixion, like if it was freezed in different moments of time, before restoration, after, and well, before blue.
Well, actually, it's nice that you say that, because it's nice to have three versions of the painting, but it also brings problems. So one of the practical problems that we run into here in Utrecht is what to do with these reproductions, because we now have these paintings, but are they paintings? So the museum can't have them in the depot because they do not have place for it. At the university, they want to keep them, but we're not yet sure where. We do not know how to make sure that we can really conserve these in a good way. So it's also bringing up a discussion within the university. How do we handle this output of research? Because that's actually what it is. It's research output, and it needs to be saved, but it's not a painting. So there's not a structure yet of how to keep this and how to care for it.
That's true. And connecting with what you were saying about the churches and candles, is it known? Maybe you said that and I missed it. Is it known for which church it might have been designed?
No, that's not known. It is in the museum collection. It came in the museum collection in the 19th century, and we didn't know anything about it until the research about the peplum cruentatum. That was research that's done by one of our research master students, and she used this iconographical motive to connect the painting to the surroundings of Bohemia, but we do not know an exact place, or we know very, very few about this, very, very little about this painting.
And yet so much also, thanks to
Yes.
the recent study.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the other important things about having a 3D model like this is that it's much easier to research these objects. So in a way, we also know more because we can look at it way better, because in the earlier days, I needed to go to the depot, to the museum, make an appointment. Someone from collection services needed to go with me, and then I would have an hour time frame to look at the painting. And now I can look at it any moment that I want, because I click open my computer and I zoom in and I see this, or even I have the 3D models here. I walk to my own version of the painting and look at it. So it's also something that really eases up the process of research.
Definitely, and of course is one of the reasons why they are done, and also accessibility for a wider public, and well, yeah, all things that you both have stressed out. I think there is sorry.
Yeah, I see a question of Ines,
Yep.
and I really like the question, because that is something that we are working on right now. So the question is, since you have a digital model of the new original version of the painting, could you not reproduce it in a scene with hundreds of candles in a digital environment? And would it not be accurate to do the reflection of gold in a 3D environment? That's something we're thinking about. So there are a couple of practical problems when you want to do this. So you can create a scene like this in Unity or in another 3D program, but that requires a lot of skill to do so. And like I said earlier, it's very difficult to capture the gold. So because gold reflects light, it looks different anytime you put another light color on it. So how can you, in a good way, recreate this golden surface? And that's also something we ran into when we were doing the reconstruction. So Sylvia was doing the reconstruction in Madrid, and Caroline and I, the curator or conservator, were trying to explain how the gold looked. But that was very difficult because we could not share pictures. So that is a large problem. So we're working now in Utrecht on a project where we want to make a virtual database of 500 gold leaf samples that we want to use to improve the way we show gold in this virtual world. And we also try to develop a viewer where we can experiment with this unstable candlelight. So you have a lot of viewers where you can manipulate the light. For example, the Smithsonian Voyager, you can manipulate the light color, but it's always stable. And what I really would like is a viewer where you can mimic these candles in an easy way. So very good question, Ines, and this is something that we're working on right now. Thanks.
I would like to say something as well. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, thank you, Sanne, for an amazing presentation and a fantastic way of explaining this project. And I think the key here is lighting, how you are really having original paintings in museums and in galleries. How are you presenting them to the public? There is this concern still in many places, in many institutions, about we can only show originals in our rooms, in our galleries. We are only showing original paintings, but apparently there is not much problem with showing original paintings with very artificial light, you know? So there is a kind of incoherence here, because you are never really perceiving these originals nowhere near as similar as they were meant to be seen. Facsimiles can offer this opportunity, not as a substitution to the original, but as a complement. You can, of course, go and see the original, enjoy it, but then you can go and see, for example, the facsimile of the Crucifixion in any of the versions with real candlelight, or not even candlelight, maybe just with natural light from the window, not a perfectly uniform artificial light. And this is just, we are today talking about panel paintings, and panel paintings in medieval times, it's all about using the available resources and the technology of the time to create effects which otherwise are not possible. And gold is one of those things that facilitate this effect of movement, of spatiality, vibration in the painting. And this is only possible with a certain kind of imperfect light. When you are using very uniform, perfectly balanced light, you are missing a lot of the experience. So I think what you are proposing of going one step further with these reproductions and presenting them with a different type of light will, of course, help understanding much better the original purpose of these artworks.
Thank you, Carlos. There are some questions for you now, technical about the recording. I don't know if you read it. What is the dimension of the digital objects created through your technique, more or less? I believe.
Yeah. So if we are talking about the size of the files that we are generating, for example, when we are 3D scanning a painting that is about 1 square meter, we are generating files which are about 250 megabytes of data. This is not much. This is relatively, low size file, but we are still keeping a resolution, a very high resolution in the detail. The reason we are capable of keeping, let's say, a relatively low size of the files is because we are capturing the 3D information as a grayscale depth map. A depth map is a type of 3D format that is actually an image in which every pixel, every level of gray in the pixel is representing a level of depth or height on the surface. I think Sanne was mentioning a little bit about this earlier. When you are capable of working with 3D information, very precise 3D information, effectively as if it were images, you have a lot of advantages. And then you can record and process not only paintings of 1 square meter, you can record large areas of surface, wall paintings, very big canvas paintings, for example, and still make it manageable, and you can work with them in a relatively easy way. It would take about, I don't know, for one painting of 1 square meter, it can take about 4 hours for the 3D scanning, and then about another hour for the color recording. So we are more or less in the range of 5 hours for scanning one painting that has 1 square meter of area. The processing could be, I don't know, it depends on many factors, but let's say if we have spent 5 hours recording a painting, we can consider 10 hours of processing to actually follow all the steps that are necessary to stitch together the different scans, register the color layer on top of the 3D layer. There are many steps that are involved in different types of skills with different types of software. So this is more or less a general overview of how time this requires.
Thank you so much. And somebody is asking also about the frescoes and if we can use the same technique.
Yes, absolutely. So today we have been talking about these particular technologies for recording paintings, doing 3D scanning with this laser scanning technology, and then panoramic photography for the color. And this is completely possible to apply for frescoes, any wall painting, canvas painting, maps, etc. So as long as we are talking about what we can say, what we can define as 2.5 dimensions objects, it's a kind of a tricky concept here, but we are talking about generally flat form with texture, with surface relief. So this idea of 2.5D objects is what we are including in this area of paintings. For recording a sculpture, we would use different methods, photogrammetry, other types of 3D scanning, etc. But yeah, that would be, let's say, for a different session.
And since we were talking about different skills and the teamwork and then the techniques recorded, next week we will talk about canvases and of course also the recording and other case studies, as you probably know.
I think there's one last question,
yeah,
which is about applying this technique with manuscripts. For manuscripts, we are talking about a very much shallow relief. So of course, it's complicated to understand the same level of topography. We are talking about objects that are more shallow, more fine relief. We are applying another technique. It's called photometric stereo scanning. And this is something actually that in one of our previous Archive Online Academy sessions, you can find out, if you're interested, a lot more about this other type of objects. We were doing a couple sessions, if I'm right, Costanza, which were precisely about techniques for recording in 3D the surface of manuscripts, works on paper, or for example, copper plates, objects that are, even more difficult to record than paintings in terms of 3D.
Other questions? What would you say are the biggest advantages of your methodology of a mix of 3D scanning with panoramic photography for 2.5D object in place of photogrammetry?
Well, the idea of combining two different methods is because we can obtain the best of each method. So if we were to apply photogrammetry for painting, in some paintings it would work. But for example, if you are working with a painting that is very glossy because maybe it has a very heavy layer of varnish or other reflection issues, in our experience, it can generate too much noise in the data. So we prefer to use the Lucida scanner, which was, from the beginning, designed and developed for capturing the surface of a painting. So we could avoid the problem of glossiness or very reflective surface. With time, photogrammetry is also improving very much in the last years. And of course, it is possible to apply it to certain kind of paintings. But for the best results today, we still rely on using this combination of triangulation laser scanner of the Lucida system with panoramic photography. Am I right, Sanne?
Yes, you are. I have worked with photogrammetry and experimented with it, but I think that the combination of Lucida and panoramic is, especially for these kind of objects, the best way to go, because photogrammetry would the gold of the object would create problems. It would miscalculate, and yeah.
Great. We have been also very on time without forgetting the question and answers time. If there is some other question, please type or raise your hand. Maybe not for today. Maybe next week. Who will connect? Of course, we'll have the second lesson of this.
I think there's one more question coming in.
Type in. Perfect. We will wait.
There's time.
I just put an email address in case anybody wants to contact for any other specific question or request in the chat.
Maybe Ines, you can also directly ask the question if you prefer, instead of typing. Here it is. It seems from what you say that this method generates a 50 megabyte file. Would you say that in terms of amount of data obtained and created, this would be larger than with a photogrammetry approach? This would be larger than?
I would say if you wanted to achieve similar resolution with photogrammetry, the amount of, the size of the files would be larger.
Yeah, but I think
yeah.
I think it's important to state that this decrease of file size depends on this 1 or 2.5 dimension of the, so it's the really low relief that gives you the opportunity to do this height map. And if you, for example, do a statue, then you would always need to do photogrammetry or another way of scanning, because you cannot put a statue in a height map, because it's really 3D. So that's the difference between 3D and the 2.5D that Carlos mentioned. So it's also the objects that decide what technique you can use.
Yeah, you might have seen also Ines answering that she's currently doing photogrammetry project, and she has trouble with the size of files. In fact,
yeah, and you are welcome to contact us if you want to ask specific questions about the method, etc. We're really happy to help.
well, I think we can say goodbye and see you next week, 14th of March, when we will be talking about canvases. And thank you very much to Sanne, Carlos, and of course Luca Massimo Barbero, even if he just left. And it has been a pleasure, and I'm sure very interesting for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.